morning. Uh, our most fervent hope when we accepted the invitation to present our research was to execute an advancement in our research. So while I was reviewing it last night and trying to add some more important details, that was my guiding light, so to speak, that there should be an advancement in the research that was undertaken early this year. So this is basically the presentation consists of the bulk of what we presented at Phnom Penh on the 9th Annual International PISA Conference. Okay, so and the advancement should be powered by the need to view the feasibility of public sector reform. So we are talking here of three bureaucracies, national bureaucracies: the Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Interior and Local Government, and I was in charge of Department of Education. So it's about the PBIS, or the Performance-Based Incentive System. And to give an overview, it's important that we start with the narrative leading to the PBIS. And this is level view of the narrative because it starts with the current government. You know, the PBIS has a long story. It even, in a way, it began with the former dictator, Ferdinand Marcos. So in the literature, some literature, in fact, highlight the origin of PBIS in the transition period of democratic consolidation that began with the Coria Aquino administration. So here is a short list of the institutional narrative of the PBIS. And obviously, at least from my end, the research has taken a very strong institutional point of view, particularly historical institutionalism. Okay, so here is the institutional narrative. But the long and short of the PBIS is actually about enhancing the performance of public sector employees through a performance management system that essentially consists of a performance metrics that involves monetary and non-monetary reward. So that's why at the bottom of the PowerPoint is a figure that represents the monetary aspect of the performance-based incentive system. Now, the institutional context, we should begin with the reality that public sector performance is a persistent problem in our bureaucracies. In fact, in the latest literature, public administration literature that studies Philippine bureaucracies, this has been cited. I think it was a research article, either published or edited by Alexander Magno, NCPAG. And the choice of the bureaucracies is relevant in the sense that the last two bureaucracies, namely DILG and DepEd, represent an issue, a core issue about the nature of the persistence of the performance problem in Philippine bureaucracy. In the same literature that I have just cited, there is a reference to size and personnel distribution. Size and personnel distribution as a key variable that accounts for performance-related issues, which, as you know, is mainly negative. Then you have also the issue of institutional deficit, the failure or the difficulty of Philippine public institutions to address citizen demand. So there is a institutional deficit in the relationship between the state/government and the citizens. And then you have Dang Matwid. Dang Matwid is our slogan for whatever this current government means by reform. So it's Dang Matwid. When we say Dang Matwid these days, we refer to Benigno Aquino III's concept of reform. Yeah, so the literature is important because it's a case study. Now, in the literature, it says that public sector performance, and the literature says more than a dozen of, meaning if we summarize the state-of-the-art literature on the matter, we can come up with more than 10 core propositions. I chose propositions that are relevant to our discussion today. So, it's public sector performance management is a political process. From the literature, new public management tradition, it says that identifying the true effect of performance management has so far been unsatisfactory. And this is coming from studies, similar phenomena in Scandinavian countries. It seems that in the Scandinavian literature, there is a close association between the Scandinavian countries and the new public management tradition. Although we did the NPM, by the way, our own local literature actually cites the Cory Aquino administration as having implemented the NPM. It also says that performance measurement systems have either moderating or counterproductive effect on performance that is driven by a sense of mission or idealism. I chose this particularly in view of my data. My data speaks clearly and very well of the idealism of our public school teachers. And the literature asserts that a performance system, in our case PBIS, has either a moderating effect or counterproductive effect on the behavior of public sector employees who are idealistic. So this is the discovery. Generally, there is a positive view of performance. But specifically in the case of DepEd, there is this unfelicitous, if not tragic, distinction, behaviorally speaking, between performance and compliance. So there is a system of vigorous compliance resulting in the same. Unfortunately, there emerged the view that if I comply, I perform. And again, there is a rich literature on this matter that includes gaming the system. So there is a distinction between performance and compliance. So they are not the same. Then the PBIS perceived by CHED and DILG personnel as better than previous performance evaluation systems. So CHED and DILG employees have been revealed by data as more appreciative of the positive change in the performance measurement system. Then I think it's pretty universal in the three cases, because it cuts across the three cases, that there is subjectivity in the interpretation and implementation of performance-based incentive system. And this actually contributes to the validity of the assertion that it's a political process. Essentially, this means that it is a power-oriented process. Then you have, in the case of DepEd, the adaptation. Because in my specific paper, I actually argued for institutional adaptation, but based on contingency. So I was trying to apply contingency theory and institutional adaptation. Because DepEd actually is a unique case. DepEd either was allowed or was simply being stubborn. Because DepEd came up with its own PBIS, to the consternation of the Chief HR Office of the Land Commission on Civil Service, because the DepEd people adopted their own. So when I interviewed Undersecretary Jess Mateo, he said, well, we had to do that because we have our own reality. Besides, there is an ongoing reform agenda within DepEd, and he referred me to the SPM, the school-based management system. So the DepEd's adaptation of PBIS is an adjustment in favor of SPM. Hence, DepEd's distinctly patterned PBIS. Then the last point should be another discussion actually. The last point is in itself a discussion because in our research, we were able to glean from the data the dynamic interaction between institutional context and the question of the properties of the institutions and the change strategies of actors, meaning that the change strategies employed by, in this case, the national government, and the change strategies of actors who see themselves as stakeholders. So in the case of DepEd, we're talking here of labor unions.